Kia ora koutou, assalamu alaikum jami'an. My name is Arija Arif and I'm an educational psychologist. Today I will be sharing with you 4 tips about what to say or do when supporting family and friends who are grieving. Now, when we have somebody close to us who we really adore and respect and we see that they're quite distressed, sometimes we might have this anxiety about approaching them and not knowing what to say or not knowing if we're going to say the right thing or the wrong thing. We genuinely want to support them, but we don't know where to start. Sometimes those feelings make us feel so uncomfortable and so awkward that we end up avoiding this person altogether. Now, the grief process is quite an isolating experience for the person going through it. And so when people close to them avoid them for those kind of reasons of feeling uncomfortable talking to them, that might make the experience even more isolating. So if there's one thing you shouldn't do, don't avoid the person because you're uncomfortable with what to say. So the first tip that I have for you is actually just a 3-step process about how to start a conversation with the person who's grieving or distressed about something. So the first step is to acknowledge. Just acknowledge the situation, and this is very, very simple. So if we're talking about the sentencing that's coming up in Christchurch soon, it could be as simple as saying, "Hey, I heard that the sentencing was coming up and that you are going." The second step with that conversation is just to express your concern. So what are you actually concerned about? It could be something as simple as, and people have been mentioning that the sentencing might take a while, that some people will have to reread statements. So I just was concerned that you might be impacted by all that. And the third step is just to make your offer of support. So be as genuine as you can. If you genuinely have no idea how to support the person, then say that, because the person will know when people are being genuine. So just say something like, "And to be honest, I have no idea how to support you, but I would really love to do anything that you may need support with, because all I know is that I really care about you and respect you and adore you as a person. So if there's anything that I can do, please let me know." And that's it. That's just a start of a conversation, and then you can wait to see how they respond and how the conversation will flow. So I'll just sum that 3-step process real quick. Acknowledge, express your concern, offer your support. So something like, "Hey, I heard that the sentencing was coming up. People have been saying that it might take a while, and I'm just wondering how you're gonna feel about that. I care for you deeply and I want to support you. I'm just not sure how. Please tell me how I can support you. I really want to be there for you." So that's the first step, starting the conversation with 3 steps. The second tip that I have is to avoid taking things personally, being judgmental. So if the person at the end of that conversation turns around and says, "I'm actually quite over everyone just hoarding over me and asking me all these questions, and I'd just prefer to be by myself right now," don't take it personally and kind of get defensive about it. They genuinely might have had a lot of offers of support. They just might be at that stage of grief where they're feeling a lot of anxiety, or they're just need space to be alone and think, and that's okay. If you don't be defensive and you just respond with something like, "Oh, that's fine, I just wanted to support you, let me know whenever you need me," and leave them to it, then they might dwell on that and later on reflect and think, you actually were a genuine person, and they might actually draw or rely on you when they need to. So just maintain like an open mind when talking to people who are grieving, because everybody's at a different stage, and the way they react to specific things will be different. Try not to be judgmental either about the stage of grief that they're at. If they're still distressed 1 year on, then that's fine. That's just the way that they're processing their grief. If they've moved on and seemed like they've got their life together, then that's also okay. That's just how they're processing their grief. avoid, directive statements like you should do this or you should be here right now. And make sure not to overly focus on giving advice as well. So some people are so preoccupied with how am I going to respond to this comment with advice, or how am I going to respond to this comment with another piece of advice. Sometimes all your friends or family members want is for someone to be able to listen to them, for someone that they can just vent to. So just, you don't have to be Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It, just offering constant advice to them. Just hear them out and acknowledge their feelings. And sometimes, it's not advice that they're actually looking for. Now, that takes us to the third tip, which is being comfortable just sitting in silence. So after you've said the 3 steps that from tip 1, sometimes the person that you're talking to might just be silent, just not respond. Don't feel the need to fill in those silent gaps with words, because sometimes we might end up talking too much, deviating off topic, saying things that weren't what we planned to say. That's when maybe something wrong might come out of you by mistake. So if the person is silent, they might just be genuinely processing what you've just said. They might actually be thinking about how you could be of support to them. So just be comfortable sitting there with the silence. You just being there is actually very powerful for that person, and will actually most of the time provide them with the support that they need. So don't feel like you need to fill those pauses with words. The 4th tip that I have is for people that feel like they're not very good with words, and they would rather do something practical for the person. So when you want to offer support and you want to offer something practical, be the one to take the initiative with this offer. And try to phrase things in a way that makes it easier for the person who's grieving to accept. So asking others for support is difficult for people in general. There might be an element of shyness in it, and just this general discomfort about, not wanting to hassle or burden anyone else. And for the person that's grieving, they're already going through all sorts of emotions. That kind of feeling is just might drain their energy a bit more. So instead of asking them things like, oh, what can I do for you? Or I want to cook something for you. Please tell me what I should cook for you. That kind of makes the person that's grieving have to think about, how they're going to ask you for support, and they just might be reluctant and say something like, oh no, that's all right, I'm fine. Whereas if you rephrase it in a way that makes it easier to accept, then that might actually be quite useful. And also phrasing it in a way that you or someone in your family might be the one to actually benefit from it. So I'll give you an example. It could be that, the person that's grieving has a child, and they're friends with your child as well. And you could say something like, hey, my daughter has actually been saying recently that she's really missed your daughter. I'm just wondering if I can just swing by and pick her up after school for a few hours, and I'll drop her off at 6 o'clock or something. And that way it makes it easier for the grieving person or the person that's struggling to accept. They could just respond with, yeah, sure. They don't actually have to be the one to ask you and tell you what it is that they want you to do. And also, it's, if you're the one that's offering that specific thing, it sends a message to them that this is what you're capable of doing. If we give an example it could be even with the sentencing coming up, like, oh, I've heard that you've wanted to go. I'm more than happy to look after the kids. My kids miss them anyways, and we would really like to hang out with them for the day. So just an offer that makes it easier for them to accept. It could be, you could offer anything within your capacity, things like running errands, doing chores, supporting them by just even coming in and helping them have a good time, helping them have some fun for a change. Like, I've been feeling lonely these days. I'm just wondering if I could just come by. I've got a bunch of snacks that I've just bought and a movie in mind. Can I just come and catch up with you for a bit? So it kind of like, if you take the initiative, you offer what kind of support that you're willing to offer, then it's easier for them to say yes or no without having to think about what it is that they could ask of you. So these are the 4 main tips that I have. Just make sure that, if the person that you're talking to has makes any comments with regards to suicide or self-harm or harm to others, that you do take that seriously, and you do kind of genuinely tell them that you're concerned about that. Offer that you might go with them to see someone else, and maybe ring one of the helplines just to get support and advice about what you should do in that situation. But other than that, I really just want to give a big shout out to all the people in the community that are supporting everyone that's affected by the Christchurch attacks and the sentencing that's coming up. And to those that have been affected, my heart is with you and my thoughts are with you, and I hope that these tips have helped. Assalamu alaikum.